Welcome to Thinking Deeper by 6-7. Today we are looking at two radically different blueprints for building wealth. On one side, we have a serene, mindset-driven approach focusing on daily affirmations and attracting effortless money. On the other, we have a fiery, tough love rant demanding strict budgeting, zero debt, and relentless hard work. We are going to explore both of these sources to figure out what it actually takes to win with money.
Yeah, it's genuinely a fascinating collision of ideas. We're parsing through materials that feel like they belong in, I don't know, alternate dimensions,
Right.
but they are aiming at the exact same target, which is financial independence. The tension we're unpacking today is that tug of war between the internal mindset you have to cultivate and the external, often grueling actions you absolutely have to take.
If you like my channel, please subscribe and press the like button, because this comparison is really going to challenge how you think about your own daily habits. Reading through these two sources, the contrast gives you absolute whiplash.
Wow, total.
The first source is a transcript of this popular audio track of Wealth Affirmations by VYBO. Listening to it feels like getting a warm, comforting hug from the universe.
Yeah, a very cozy approach.
Exactly. And then you turn to the second source, this transcript of a highly aggressive rant by financial personality Dave Ramsey. And it feels like someone just kicked your door down and dumped a bucket of ice water over your head.
It's a shock to the system, for sure.
It really makes you wonder, as we navigate this deep dive, which approach do you naturally lean toward?
Well, let's start with a more serene approach. The VYBO transcript is titled Affirmations for Money, Wealth, Success, and Prosperity.
Right.
And the text is entirely focused on crafting an internal landscape of pure abundance. The whole architecture of it is built on repeating very specific, highly positive statements.
Yeah, phrases like, I am a magnet for wealth and abundance really jump out immediately.
Exactly. It's not financial instruction in the traditional sense. It's designed to completely shift how you perceive your own potential.
Money flows to me effortlessly. He repeats those concepts over and over. I have multiple streams of income, or unexpected wealth comes to me regularly.
It moves your relationship with money from a space of anxiety to a space of expectation.
And that I am the architect of my reality line. It creates this soothing atmosphere where money isn't this scarce resource you have to fight tooth and nail for.
Right. It's framed as a natural force that just gravitates towards you. From a behavioral psychology standpoint, the mechanism here is interrupting chronic negative self-talk.
Because we naturally lean negative, right?
We do. Humans have a well-documented negativity bias. If your internal narrative constantly tells you that you're broke or that the system is rigged,
That you'll never get ahead.
yeah, exactly. You subconsciously filter out opportunities. You act in defensive ways that actually keep you broke. By systematically repeating those phrases, the objective is to overwrite that internal software.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because I read this, and part of me absolutely loves the positivity. But my analytical brain is highly skeptical.
Sure, that makes sense.
If you just sit on your couch, close your eyes, and repeat that money finds its way to you effortlessly for 3 hours every morning, is a bag of cash gonna just drop through the ceiling?
Right, the magical thinking critique.
Yeah. How do we ground this? Because on its face, it sounds a little bit like attempting to use magic.
What's fascinating here is that even within the affirmations themselves, if we look closely at the specific verbiage, there are explicit clues that this isn't literal magic.
Okay.
It's about psychological priming. Interspersed with all those lofty ideas of effortless money, the source actually includes highly practical phrases. It says, I am free from limiting beliefs. And crucially, I trust my intuition and take positive actions.
Take positive actions. So there is a mechanical engine hidden inside the wishing. It requires you to actually do something.
It demands action, but it attacks the barrier to action. The utility of this source isn't that it summons capital out of thin air. It's that it dismantles the cognitive barriers preventing you from pursuing wealth in the first place.
Because if you inherently believe you're destined to be poor,
You simply won't apply for the higher-paying job. You won't take the risk to start a business. You won't even bother reading a book on investing.
you have to believe the door is unlocked before you will ever bother trying to turn the handle. That is a brilliant way to frame it.
Exactly. You're conquering the internal game first so that the external game becomes possible.
But the transition from that serene, positive mindset to our second source is jarring, because Dave Ramsey, in this transcript, he does not care about your inner child.
He certainly does not.
He does not care if you feel like a magnet for wealth.
No, the Ramsey source is a brutal, unapologetic reality check. where the first source is all about internal harmony. His transcript is focused on external action, mathematical reality, and extreme personal accountability.
It reads like a full-blown rhetorical assault. He completely dismisses anyone who criticizes his framework.
Oh yeah, he takes no prisoners.
At one point, he specifically calls out a broke 26-year-old journalism student deeply in student loan debt who wrote an article critiquing him.
And he mocks financial bloggers, dissecting his advice from their mother's basement.
Yes, he essentially draws a line in the sand and says, if you don't take concrete action and do the math his way, you are what's known as wrong.
The rhetorical strategy there is designed to strip away every possible excuse a listener might have. He is aggressively tearing down the instinct to intellectualize financial problems instead of actually fixing them.
He also gets quite politically charged in this rant. We should note that he dismisses people wanting to act rich as liberal nonsense.
Right, he definitely brings politics into it.
He takes direct shots at the government, explicitly stating that nobody in Washington, and he names both Democrats and Republicans, is going to fix your life. He compares relying on politicians to save you to waiting for Santa Claus.
Which is a pretty stark comparison.
It is. Now, looking at this strictly impartially, we are obviously not endorsing or condemning those political jabs. We're just reporting what's in the text. But the core message he is delivering is one of radical self-reliance. He is telling the listener that the cavalry is not coming.
Exactly. Regardless of how a listener feels about the political framing, his underlying financial philosophy is that you are the single variable in your life that you have total control over.
Which actually kind of mirrors the affirmations, if you think about it.
It's a striking parallel, just delivered with an entirely different emotional payload. The affirmations gently teach you to say, I am the architect of my reality. Ramsey is essentially screaming the exact same concept into a microphone. You are going to fix your life.
One is a therapist, the other is a drill sergeant.
But both are fundamentally demanding that you take absolute ownership of your situation.
You are going to fix your life. That really is the thesis statement of his entire brand. And he doesn't just yell at the audience. He provides a highly specific mechanical roadmap.
The 5 pillars.
Right. He outlines these steps derived from the Bible and your grandmother, he says, that are just basic common sense. He guarantees that if you execute these, you will win with money.
They're heavily structured, actionable steps that leave absolutely zero room for ambiguity. He builds a chronological foundation, starting with a written plan.
A budget.
Right.
And he leans into a biblical quote here, referencing Jesus talking about a man building a tower who must first sit down and count the cost.
Yeah, so he doesn't get halfway up, run out of materials, and get mocked by his neighbors.
Ramsey's takeaway is incredibly blunt. No one accidentally wins.
Right. You have to have a written game plan for your income before the month even begins. The mechanism of a budget forces you out of a passive relationship with your money.
You're no longer just letting expenses happen to you.
Exactly. But once you establish that blueprint, you immediately hit the biggest roadblock, which is the weight of your past decisions. That dictates his militant stance on debt.
He gets visibly fired up in the transcript about this. He argues that your most powerful wealth-building tool is your income.
And that spending your working life funneling your income to banks makes you stupid.
Yeah, he says the banks use your interest payments to fill up the skyline and buy nice furniture. He argues that once you have zero debt payments, you suddenly have all your money back to build wealth.
Let's explain why he identifies debt as the ultimate enemy here. Because it's not just a moral failing in his eyes, it's a mathematical one.
How so?
Well, when you take on consumer debt, your future income is spoken for before the month even starts. You've essentially time-traveled and spent your future labor.
Wow, time-traveling your labor. That's a great way to put it.
The compound interest works against you, suffocating your cash flow. That visceral image he uses, the towering bank skylines built on your interest payments, it's designed to make the listener angry enough to radically alter their spending habits.
And once you stop bleeding money, you hit his next pillar, living on less than you make. He references a proverb about the wise storing up food and oil while the foolish devour it.
Right.
So what does this all mean? If someone feels truly stuck at a low-paying job, isn't this advice a bit harsh? It's like telling someone in a sinking boat to just build a better boat.
That is the most frequent criticism leveled at this philosophy.
Because if wages are completely stagnant, living on less than you make feels impossible.
The transcript shows Ramsey addressing the stagnant wage argument head-on, and his response is completely devoid of sympathy. He says, if wages are stagnant, you are stagnant.
Ouch. That is a tough pill to swallow.
It is. He uses this powerful, visceral metaphor about stagnant pond water. He points out that when water stays completely still, it grows scum on top.
Right.
His argument is that you're only trapped by stagnant wages if you make the active decision to stay in that pond. He bluntly commands his audience to upskill and leave. Go be somebody else.
His exact phrasing is, you need to leave the cave, kill something, and drag it home.
You cannot get more primal than that.
No, you really can't. But it perfectly encapsulates his view. You can't sit around waiting for the macroeconomic environment to improve.
You have to aggressively control the variables you can touch. And when you do that, you create what he calls margin. Margin is the lifeblood of his fourth pillar, which is investing and saving.
Right, because you must have money to invest.
Yeah, he points out a hilarious truth about the financial industry. People love getting caught up in the weeds, arguing about expense ratios or real estate versus the stock market.
But Ramsey cuts through all that. He says the problem isn't the rate of return or the fees. The problem is they don't have any investments.
He points out the basic math. 100% of the people who don't save money end up with zero money.
It's the ultimate reality check.
You cannot optimize a portfolio that doesn't exist. Margin is the only thing that allows you to buy assets that compound. But the sequence doesn't end with hoarding wealth.
No, it leads to his final pillar, which is honestly the most surprising part of his rant. Given his tough love persona, you wouldn't expect it, but the fifth pillar is about being outrageously and lavishly generous.
He calls giving money away the most fun you will ever have with it.
But he firmly anchors it back to the math. Broke people cannot be outrageously generous. You must secure the margin first. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because when we lay the VYBO affirmations and the Ramsey rant side by side, we hit a massive contradiction in how they view the lifestyle of wealth.
Oh, the luxury aspect.
Yes. The affirmations explicitly instruct the listener, I attract money by embracing luxury. The underlying philosophy is that you have to act rich to signal to the universe that you are ready to be rich.
Right.
But Dave Ramsey goes out of his way to aggressively mock this exact behavior. He explicitly states that acting like rich people does not mean financing a Ferrari.
Yeah, he says if you buy a Ferrari to act rich, you aren't acting rich, you are acting like a moron.
Acting like a moron. It is the polar opposite of embracing luxury.
He draws a very sharp distinction between everyday millionaires who built their wealth slowly and the ultra-rich. Attempting to mimic the spending habits of the ultra-rich is exactly what keeps the middle class trapped in debt.
So we have one source telling us to visualize our desired life and embrace luxury, and another screaming that if we do that, we're fools who will end up bankrupt. How do we reconcile these two philosophies?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the profound realization is that these two sources don't cancel each other out. They actually desperately require one another to work.
How so?
Mindset without tangible action is useless. Ramsey actually has a phenomenal quote in the transcript addressing this. He mocks broke people who sit around discussing their investment philosophies without actually investing.
Oh, the weed quote.
Yeah, he compares them to people smoking weed discussing the meaning of life. They ain't getting nothing done.
That imagery is perfect. Just sitting on the couch, visualizing your abundance without opening a spreadsheet to do a budget is just glorified daydreaming.
Worse than that, it actively prevents real progress. However, the inverse is equally true. And this is where Ramsey's method often falls short for people.
Action without the right mindset.
Exactly. Action without the positive mindset inevitably leads to burnout. Ramsey's entire framework relies on intense, prolonged, delayed gratification.
You're voluntarily suffering today, driving a beat-up car, skipping vacations for the promise of wealth a decade from now.
And human beings cannot endure that kind of voluntary suffering without a powerful, positive vision of the future.
You need the psychological armor to survive the grind. If you try to aggressively pay off debt, but you secretly believe money is evil, or that you're destined to be poor, you'll self-sabotage.
The warm hug of the affirmations isn't literal magic. It is the psychological armor you strap on every morning so you can survive the ice water of Ramsey's strict mathematical discipline without quitting.
You need the belief of abundance to fuel the daily execution of the budget. So I want to pose this directly to you listening right now. When you evaluate your own financial habits, where is your critical failure point?
That's the real question.
Do you have the margin, the spreadsheets, the strict budget, the focus on zero debt, but you completely lack the mindset? Are you operating from a place of deep scarcity and fear?
Or, conversely, do you have the mindset, the vision boards, the unwavering belief that you deserve a beautiful life, but you entirely lack the margin? Are you putting dinners on a high-interest credit card to embrace luxury while mathematically digging a hole you can never climb out of?
It is a vital self-assessment, because whether you prefer visualizing your desired life daily or ruthlessly cutting up your credit cards, the underlying requirement for both is extreme intentionality.
You cannot accidentally drift into a life of wealth. You truly need both the grand vision of the architect and the gritty determination of the person leaving the cave to drag something home.
Absolutely.
And I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder.
Mm.
What if the ultimate luxury in life isn't an effortless existence where money magically falls from the sky? And what if it certainly isn't a financed Ferrari just to impress neighbors you don't even like? What if the ultimate luxury is the absolute peace of mind that comes from having the financial margin to be outrageously, anonymously generous to someone in need?
Wow.
Imagine how your local community would change if you applied both the unshakable belief of abundance and the strict mathematical discipline of a budget.
That is an incredible concept to end on, because when the warm hug of a resilient mindset meets the ice-cold reality of disciplined action, that is where actual generational wealth is built. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep thinking deeper, and we'll see you next time.